Thank you again, guys, for stepping in and doing that. Just a quick announcement. I meant to make this earlier. I did find some money in the church. I don't know what it was intended for, but got it? All right, I got it. I forgot to announce that, so I do have it. Somebody handed it to me, and I reached in, felt it in my pocket. So 1 Peter chapter 1. Anybody else claim for it? We'll do a high bidder. You got one too? Oh, see what we can raise that up to. All right, 1 Peter chapter 1. We've been kind of diligently looking through, and my hope would be, we've talked about a lively hope, that you would go back and as you look at 1 Peter chapter 1, you begin to piece some of these words together so that you can apply it to your life, because that's the purpose of reading and studying and hearing God's word. It's not for entertainment. It's not to make you necessarily motivated or to feel better. It's to give you solid information that you can take back and begin to diligently apply it to your life. And let me share with you, when you do this, you will find that some of these are challenging. It'll be difficult to overhaul the way we think and how we act. You will see that there are strong patterns in your life that we have to overcome. These are part of the trials that you'll see today. Let me give you my statement. If you're taking notes, here's where we are. Trials are troublesome for those of us who try. And for those of us this morning, either we're trying or we're not. Some of us aren't trying, and it doesn't seem like trials are overwhelming. But if you're putting forth some effort to do things for the kingdom of God or to diligently change those aspects of your life, you're going to find out there are many trials to overcome. Trials are troublesome for those of us who try. And looking at 1 Peter, just to kind of catch us up, we said Peter started with his name, which was really important. It's a signature, which was really common at the time, but he identifies who he is. He identifies who he's become. He's an apostle of Jesus Christ, and then he identifies his audience. And we kind of looked at this in saying that if we can identify those three areas in our life, it's a game changer of who we are. We got to know who we are, we got to know who we've become, and we got to know who our audience is. Notice what he said last week. We're kind of looking at these things, and we're looking at the hope that he's given us. Verse 3 says, "Blessed be the God, or all praise be to him, our Father and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is according to not just any mercy, but his abundant mercy." He doesn't run out of mercy. Thanks be to God, out of all the mistakes that we make, God is a merciful God, and he hath begotten us, according to verse 3, or he's caused us to be born again unto a hope, or a lively hope, which is an expectation. There's certain expectations we can have in our life. Now, outside spiritually, there's a whole lot of expectations we have. I mean, I remember people saying, hey, you can expect to die and you can expect to pay taxes. Can somebody say amen? Okay, well, if you pay taxes, I guess. Those are probably two expectations. But this is something much deeper and much better. This is an expectation. This is hope. This is, notice what he's saying here. It's a living hope. It's a lively hope. It's something that motivates us outside of who's speaking, who's singing, who's doing what. The focus of fall is to finish the starts of summer. It's a confident optimism that the things that we're reading, we can bank on, we can rest that it'll happen, it'll come to pass. Notice what we're saying today. Trials are troublesome for those of us who try. The reason I stand before you today with a lively hope is according to verse 3. Notice what he says. It's because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. If I take that portion of the verse out, or that portion of what I'm preaching you today, then I have no hope, and I surely don't have a lively hope. And there's no reason for us to sing and preach. It's because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. It's given us an opportunity to be runners for Christ. We noted David and Goliath and Gennesaret, and how Christ crossed over, and they were running to get people who were sick to come to Jesus. Trials are troublesome for those of us who try. I pick up in verse 6. Notice what he says. The reason verse 6 is important is because we've not only identified our hope, we've identified our inheritance of verse 4. We've identified how he can hold us by his power according to our faith, or the fact that we believe. And you'll see something a little bit deeper today. But notice verse 6, he says, wherein, or in this. And in this is kind of identifying everything that we've referred to. And because you've got this hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, you've been given an inheritance. This is an inheritance that is reserved for you in heaven, according to what the Word says. It's kept for you. It's guarded for you in heaven by the power of God Himself. This is your inheritance. Not only your inheritance, but verse 5 reminds us it's your salvation that He is protecting by your faith. It's whether you believe or not. Now, here's a real interesting thing. No one is required to believe. It's your right. It's your opportunity. I would strongly recommend that you consider the ways of the Lord, who He is, what He accomplished, where He is today. I'm convinced and He's directed my life according to verse 3, which is the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. And because of everything we're reading, because of this inheritance, because of this power of God, because of our salvation that is kept or guarded in heaven by God Himself, He says, now because of these things, according to verse 6, you can rejoice. Note that word, circle or underline. Not just any rejoice, but you can greatly rejoice. You're going to find it difficult in life to always have joy. Can somebody agree with me today? There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be what we've termed in verse 6 temptations, which is translated trials. There will be trials in life. There will be frustrations in life. How many would say with a show of hands that you have been frustrated at least once this week? You got two of them. It's like, praise the Lord. Now, keep them up again. Put them up. Everybody look around. You are not alone. Okay? You are not alone. And it's not even vacation Bible school season. All right? And you are frustrated. Things frustrate us. I mean, they get under the skin, right? They get on our nerves. They make us feel and think and speak and react and respond differently. And then, if we're sensitive to the Spirit, we feel bad. We feel guilty. We want to change. We make a lot of promises. Notice what he said. You're not going to rejoice, according to verse 6, by the things that follow that. Although you may rejoice during those events, you are rejoicing with notice what he said, in this ye greatly rejoice, or you are truly glad. You are excited with a joy because of everything we've read before. You have an inheritance and you're saved. So no matter what follows those two things, you can now rejoice. Now notice this here in verse 6. I think this is important for us if you're a pattern person. I'm a pattern guy. I like numbers and sequences and patterns. I like that. I like order. And what I like about verse 6 is rejoice comes before he mentions anything else. It's like a subtle reminder, kind of a warning of what's about to come. And he says you can greatly rejoice and be truly glad. You can be happy, and you know it, you can clap your hands, right? You can do all those things if you put your mind right before life takes over and frustrate. Now this is one of those verses in verse 6 I would have to put a D beside because it's very difficult if you follow our ABC order of how to study his word. He said, I want you to be truly glad. Notice what he's saying here. He says, this has given us a pattern of where we should position ourselves in life. Now, if you're not doing this, this will be a challenge because you have to do this constantly to remind yourself of what you're rejoicing over. You're not rejoicing necessarily over the trials that we're going through because those are difficult, right? We are rejoicing over salvation and our inheritance and the fact that God himself has the power to keep or guard that. And there's people in our lives that can't keep up with things, right? As a parent, I don't know what's happened. Like I have become a pack mule. Has anybody ever done that in the family? Like it's amazing. So if we go out as a family and we get out of the car, Sis will say, hey, here's this, hold that. Okay, I got that right there. Here's this, hold that. Okay, I've got that. Now my pocket Connor comes up and says, hold this, I want you to carry that. So you got all that on. Cindy's like, can you hold these keys in my wallet? I don't want to. So you just kind of bogged down. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. Welcome to the Lord's house. Where we can vent and share our frustrations. And notice what he said here. He says, this has put us in a mindset. So in order to kind of get through that, guess where my mind is when we arrive at a location? Be prepared. Like I wear those cargo pants now with those pockets from top to bottom. You got that right. I'm prepared. So no matter what follows, I can stay in a constant state. You say, that's really silly, but it applies to our life spiritually. Regardless of where we go in verse 6, regardless of what we read and how we share it today, he says you can be truly glad because of the things you've just learned about. And if you begin to pattern your life in this order, you're going to position yourself in life to be successful, spiritually speaking. It's a mindset. You ever felt like that? It's a mindset. It's changing the rules that applies to you and what the world says. It's changing our mind. It's an understanding of how things work. Isn't that amazing what age will do to us? It gives us an understanding of how things work that we didn't have an understanding of before. Like we want to go back, I guess, if we felt this way and be young, but we really want the mindset we have now, the understanding that we have. It's called experience. It's called time. Now, some of that is alarming too, because to gain that means that we gain in age. But it's a beautiful thing to experience. It's wonderful to understand and begin to piece things together, that if I kind of position myself with joy, notice this here, I can have the ability to greatly rejoice, regardless of where we go today, because of the things that we learned. It's a mindset. It's an understanding. It's the posture of success. Now, one thing I am not blessed with is good posture. I'm a sloucher. We got any slouchers in the house today? Yeah, I'm a sloucher. And people always say, sit up straight. I feel weird, like sitting straight. Does anybody feel that way? Like I just feel very, yeah. Well, while I was typing this sermon, I was studying on good posture. And the whole time I'm typing, I didn't realize I was doing it. So I'm typing the sermon, and I'm just kind of sitting in my chair, and just kind of slouched down. So I'm reading on good posture, and I just felt like I could sit up a little bit. And honestly, it felt pretty good. Like I said, man, it kind of stretched my back out. I had good posture. Notice what I found about posture that I think you'll find amazing in your life, because when you have the ability to greatly rejoice, you have put yourself in a posture of success. You will be successful spiritually if you give it a hold of verse 6. Notice this here. I don't know if you knew this. Bad posture can affect your health, your mood, and your productivity. Bad posture. Now I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, you are moody. Turn to your neighbor. Some of you have been wanting to say that. Be careful if you're married. Be careful. Turn to your neighbor and say, you are moody. Now, here's the thing about, some of you are really enjoying this. Some of you you are enjoying this. You are moody. You know one reason we're moody? Bad posture. That's what they say. That's what they say, so that's why you need to sit up straight. It gives you confidence to be more productive. Now, notice this here spiritually. Take that entire thought. Now, some of you really like that. You're like, man, preacher's really in tune with the Spirit. I've been wanting to tell her that for so long, and he gave me permission. Now, here's the real cool thing about this. You can go tell people today they're moody and tell them why, right? So notice this here about good posture. It affects your health, your mood, and how productive you are. Notice what it says. According to data collected by a particular group, what they would do is they created a device that would remind you to sit up straight if you begin to slouch. It attaches to your shirt 1 inch from your collarbone, and it alerts you when you're slouching, prompting you to correct your posture. Because people who have good posture have a better mood about them, better health, and they're more productive. As a matter of fact, the article goes on to say, it's a wonderful article, it said, good posture improves the ability we have or willingness to be productive. If you posture yourself the correct way, according to verse 6 of 1 Peter, notice what he said. This is how you begin to posture yourself. You understand that you have the willingness and ability and opportunity to greatly rejoice. That is good posture. And any time, like, wouldn't it be really neat to have something like, it would be neat to have my voice say, sit up straight. I wouldn't be anywhere around. I'm going to send a phone message out this week about sitting up straight. And you will know what that means, and you can share it with someone. This is what should be interesting about God's Word. You should be able to take verse 6 and share that by talking about someone's posture. So this is what he says. He says, I want you to be able to greatly rejoice because of your salvation and your inheritance. Good posture means that we're more productive. You know, the church will grow when we have good posture. When we are able to rejoice regardless of what we're going through, the church will grow and be productive. Here's the second thing about good posture. It boosts your confidence. I noticed, like when I'm typing this, I don't know, it's like psychological. So I'm really slouched, which is comfortable to me. I don't know why. Because it doesn't take effort, I guess. I began to sit in that chair, and I thought, man, I feel like somebody. I feel like a professor typing. People walk by. Here I am. Get your neck right. I felt good with it. Do you know a good posture will do that? You know, when you begin to rejoice, when you haven't been able to do that, you're going to feel good about yourself, your situation. It's going to be a little better because you're reminding yourself of not what you're going through, but your inheritance and your salvation, and the fact that God can keep that. It gives you confidence, and it improves your communication. You are more alert. You're more aware. Sitting or standing with your head up and shoulders back is often referred to as a powerful pose. People who stand that way are more confident in what they believe in and what they're saying. People, if you've ever noticed, like you go around a crowd of people, like I'm the guy that's kind of like crossing your shoulders and figuring things out. There's some people who's just people who believe in themselves, right? They're confident in what they believe. Now, notice verse 6 of 1 Peter is real interesting. He says, I want you to greatly rejoice because of the things we've read about, the things you can hope for. You have this lively hope. We don't need, and sometimes the Spirit is that little device that's kind of telling us to sit up or straighten up or to mind our manners or whatever it is. But notice what he says here. He says, I want you to greatly rejoice. I want you to be truly glad. Though now for a season, which is translated for a little while. And I want you to know something today, if you're taking notes or whatever you're going through, however you feel. Whatever you're going through will only last for a little while. Even if it's a lifetime, now hear me out, it's just a small dose of eternity. Peter says, I want you to rejoice about your salvation, and I want you to rejoice about your inheritance, because God's a powerful God, and He can guard it, and whatever you're going through will only last for a season. Isn't that amazing about seasons? They always come and they always go. So you can't stop wintertime, right? It's going to come and it's going to go. You can't prolong summer, even though you can try. You can do anything you want to do, but you can't stop it. It only lasts for a little while. And notice verse 6. It's real interesting. A little while means that it's temporary. So I made a phone call this week. Tell me if you find this frustrating. It seems like no matter when I can call at 7 in the morning and it says, due to extreme call volume or heavy call volume, your wait time is 42 minutes. 7 in the morning. So I'll wait till lunch. Due to heavy call volume, your wait time is 2 hours and a half. You get up at 3 in the morning, there's heavy call volume. I don't know. Heavy call volume. So here's the thing that we got to understand. Our wait time is temporary. There is a limit. Some it's longer, some it's shorter. Some of us are going through some things that we feel like should have ended long ago, and some of us are about to go through something we're not aware of. Some of us are confused. Some of us, it's relationship, it's finances, it's spiritual, it's everything we're going through. It'll only last for a season. Notice what he said. It'll only last for a little while. And notice what he said in verse 6, if you're following along. He says, wherein ye greatly rejoice, though now for a season or a little while, if need be, or if it's necessary. Some things we go through are necessary. Do you ever think of it that way? Some things we go through are necessary. He said, if it's necessary, you're going to go through this. It'll only be for a little while, but I want you to be truly glad. And I don't want you to be glad because you're going through this. I want you to be glad because of your inheritance and your salvation. That's what you can rejoice over. So even when you're going through a trial, you can still rejoice. Now, this is difficult, right? This is the D, but it's only for a little while. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't make sense how we feel. It doesn't make sense why we can't get over something. It doesn't make sense, but it only lasts for a little while, for a season. It serves a purpose. That's what trials do. Notice what he says here. So if it's necessary, you are in heaviness or you are grieved through manifold temptation. That's many or various temptations. He says, now, if need be, if it's necessary, you're going to have to go through these temptations, which are translated trials. Don't think of this as a temptation like we know it. He says you're going to go through a various... Now, let me ask you this. You help me out. You said you've been frustrated this week. How many are frustrated this week over something they haven't been frustrated over before? Would you raise your hand? Something that's not exactly the same. It's a little bit different. You know why? Because you're going to go through various trials in your life. It's not just one thing and you can check it off your box. According to verse 6, if it's necessary, you're going to go through a lot of things. Remember, it's like being late coming to church. Remember what we said? Like you get behind everybody that's run out of gas. You get behind every family of duck that's crossing the road. You know, it's like everything that could go wrong. Every road construction, every red light, everything that can go wrong. And some of these things are necessary. They teach us lessons and they help us become better. So we have to put ourselves in a mindset or have an understanding. It's the posture of success, right? Trials serve a purpose. Trials are painful, but trials are temporary. I read this. I thought it was kind of interesting. It said a missionary couple had brought some pastors to the United States for a big meeting. But during their free time, they said they wanted to go shopping, so they let them go. But they gave these pastors that came to the United States, they said, here's our phone number in case you get lost. Well, it had been some time had passed, and they called and said, we can't find your location or your house. I don't know how to get there. And he said, well, put the phone down or take it with you and go find the nearest street sign and tell me where you are, and I'll tell you how to get back home. So some time had passed, and it looked like they had struggled to find something, but he did lay the phone down. He went to the street corner, and he found the names of the two streets, and he came back and he told them. And he said, here's where I am. I'm at the corner of Walk and Don't Walk. And I am thoroughly confused of how to get home. I'm at the corner of Walk and Don't Walk. Do you know what trials will do in your life? They will cause you to freeze, pause, or stop. You don't know if you should go and you don't know if you should stay. You're in the middle of a trial. And trials wear on you. Can somebody help me out this morning? Trials make you feel less. Somebody help me? Trials make you tired, and trials make you frustrated, and trials make you confused, and trials make you freeze, and you're at the corner of walk and don't walk, and you don't know what you should do. But Peter's reminded us, put yourself in a posture of success and greatly rejoice regardless of the trials, and there's many of them. As a matter of fact, if you get through one, there'll be another one. And it'll last this lifetime because this life is not perfect. So he said these are trials. The trials of life sometimes make us feel lost and unstable. We feel directionless and we don't know which way to turn. And sometimes it even seems that there are no good options in life because we're in the middle of a trial. We just don't know what to do. We're at the corner of walk and don't walk. Notice what he says here. He goes a little further. He says, now there's a trial of your faith. This is how you're going to be tested to see if your faith is genuine, because there's a lot of people who are going to confess to believe that maybe never really believed. Did you hear what I said? There's going to be a lot of people who raised their hand but really didn't commit. The Bible's really clear. It says the road to salvation or heaven is really narrow and very few people find it. There'll be a lot of people who have felt an emotional pull to be followers of Christ. You know why we do that? Because everything's going great. Or everything's so bad we're desperate for help. But it's amazing. Have you ever found, like with medicine in your life, like you'll take it till you feel better and then you don't want to take it anymore? You know, I found that. I will take it, and when I feel better, I'm like, there's 10 left. I think I'm good. Do you know what's going to happen? I'm going to get sick again. I didn't finish the dose. I didn't fulfill my commitment or obligation. It tests how genuine we are. Notice verse 7, there's a trial of your faith. And your faith, by the way, if you're taking notes, you got to know this about you. This will help you rejoice because you're not going to rejoice. Think if Peter would have come out and said in verse 6, he'd have said, now listen, you're going to go through some trials, and it's going to be a whole bunch of them, and some of them's going to be strong, some of them going to be light, and some of them's going to be temptation, and all these things. But by the way, I want you to rejoice. Well, your mind's different. Your mind's in a different position. So he says, I want you to rejoice first because these things are happening in your life. And then there's this trial of your faith. And your faith, by the way, according to verse 7, is more precious than gold. Man, do we not like some gold? Well, gold will help us buy things, build things. That'll give you good posture if you had a lot of gold, wouldn't it? Make you hold your head high, talk real proud. He says your faith is more precious than gold because gold, notice verse 7, you got to circle this word, gold will perish. You say, what in the world? Well, it will because it's on this side of eternity. Though gold is even tried with fire, because here's what you would do. This is the trial of your faith. These type of trials will show how genuine your faith is. And gold would be refined to remove the impurities. Gold is extremely durable, but it still belongs to a world that perishes. Regardless of how you look at it, regardless of how much you like it. But he says we take gold and we refine it by fire to take the impurities out. Now I want you to pause just for a second because we are living a life, and all of us, from myself all the way to the back and front, there are impurities in our life. There are things in our life that are not pure. There's thoughts, there's actions, there's responses. We could go down the list of everything. But he says because you're impure, and sometimes it's necessary to have this trial of your faith because it's going to, notice what it said here, your faith, by the way, is more precious than gold, verse 7, because gold will perish, though it's tried with fire. He says, I'm going to try your faith with fire. And I'm going to have a trial in your life because it's necessary to draw those impurities out to give you an understanding to position or posture yourself for success. Do you really want to be successful? You can read any book you want, but I would encourage you to read his word. Because I'm telling you now, it'll challenge you. And you can go home and say, man, it felt good, it felt right, everything's great today. And man, Peter was amazing in the first chapter, and then tomorrow you're just totally back to the same old you. It's going to be a real challenge to overhaul who we are. But if we attempt to do this and begin to see some change, you will see the church change. The trial of our faith. Now notice what he says here. It'll be tried with fire. It might be found that your faith, it's going to find that your faith is genuine unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. Faith lasts longer and goes beyond this world. It's a reminder of us in verse 7. Notice verse 8, this is real amazing, whom having not seen ye love. There was this second generation. There's these groups of people who've not seen Jesus Christ, some of which are us. We're part of that group. We've never seen them with our physical eyes. Right? We've never talked to them, never walked down the street, never had fish and bread with them. We didn't do those things. But there was a group of people who did. But notice what he said. Those of you who've not seen, you still love him. And there are many in this church today who love Jesus Christ and have never seen him. And I would encourage you to rejoice. Peter reminds us, he says, whom having not seen, you love. In whom though now you see him not, you still believe. And the word means you trust. Isn't trust a funny thing? Do this for me real quick, and this will be the last time I ask you that, I promise. Raise your hand if someone's ever broken trust with you. Would you raise your hand? Everybody look around. Wow. Yeah. Do you know how discouraging and frustrating that is? Peter said, listen, you have trusted Jesus, and you've never seen him. You love him, and you've never seen him. There's something special about Jesus. Now, the world's okay with the fact that he lived and died. I'm going to tell you that. You can look it up. It's okay with that. The world's not okay with the fact that I'm preaching that Jesus is alive. Verse 3, it's because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead that I stand here today with a lively hope. He says you can rejoice. Notice verse 8, you can rejoice with a joy unspeakable and full of glory. It's an inexpressible joy. He says you have this within you because of Jesus Christ. You've not seen him, but you love him, and you've not seen him, but you trust him, and now you can rejoice with a joy unspeakable. So if you can explain it, you're not in touch with Jesus. There's going to come a point where you're just like, man, I can't even come up with a word of how good he is. I mean, no matter what I'm going, I can't even come up with a statement. This is like a joy that I can't even express. I can't raise my hand high enough, and I can't sing loud enough, and there's not enough church. There's just something going on in my life that is transpiring because of Jesus Christ, the person I've never seen, and I've not seen him to talk to him, but I trust him and I love him. And it's a joy unspeakable. Receiving, notice what he said, here's the outcome, here's the goal. You know, when I call and they say my wait time's 4.5 hours, you know what my goal is? Talk to somebody and end the call. You go to Carowinds, right? It's like 2-hour wait from this point. Isn't that the most agonizing sign? Why did I even put that up? Your wait from here is 2 hours. You know what the goal is? You know why I stand in line for 2 hours? For a 10-second ride, right? Because there's hope, there's an expectation. And I will endure to get to that. Do you know what it is to be saved? We're enduring through these trials because we have a hope of what's outside of this life. Because what we're going through here only lasts for a season. He says, here's the outcome, here's the goal. The goal is the salvation of your souls. That's the reward for trusting him. He will save your soul. There's joy today because of the hope of tomorrow. I'll close with this final small story, and I think this sums up the two types of people that we may see ourselves as. There's people here today who will fight to succeed, and there's people here today who have no resistance, that will just give up and quit. Notice what happened. 2 frogs fell into a tub of cream. Yeah, one looked at the high sides of the tub, which were way too difficult to crawl over, and here's what this frog said: it is hopeless. So he resigned himself to death, he relaxed, and he sank to the bottom. The other one was determined to keep swimming as long as he could, because his thought was, if I keep swimming, something might happen. And he kept kicking and churning and churning and kicking. And finally, he found himself on a solid platform of butter. And he jumped to safety. There are 2 of us here today. Some of us who will roll over and assume things are hopeless and our lives will sink to the bottom. And then there are those of us today who will stand and rise because they trust that Jesus is who he said he was, that our inheritance and our salvation gives us reason and cause to rejoice, and we will keep fighting and kicking and struggling because something might happen. And we will be people who will posture ourselves for success, and we will move forward to claim the victories of the battles we're in. Trials are troublesome for those of us who try. Every head bowed, eyes closed, no one.